After 12 long years of waiting, we got our next mainline Crash game. There are a few minor gripes I have with it, but for the most part, it's a well put together game. With a passable story, amazing character designs, great music, lush environments, and a fun game to boot. I've beaten the game at 100% at this point, and I have a lot to say about it, which is why I'll be separating this review into 4 sections: story, gameplay, gripes and criticisms, and praises to end on a positive note. Now, let's get started. The story begins from Cortex and Entropy's perspective. Uka Uka is seen trying to open a portal back to the future, and collapses from using seemingly all his energy to open the portal. He is then never seen or heard from again. A little while later, Cortex and Entropy are seen opening portals throughout the dimensions, awakening the quantum masks who are in charge of keeping these portals shut. First mask you meet, Lonnie Lowly, explains this to Crash and the gang, and soon after, they travel through the newly opened portals to find Lonnie Lowly's siblings, the quantum masks. The first mask you're trying to track down is Akano, who has been held captive by Engine in the hazardous wastes. After defeating Engine, though, Akano falls through a portal into another dimension, the Salty Wharf, which is where you meet alternate dimension Tana, and I do mean alternate. This particular version of Tana seems to be more battle-hardened and jaded, but still manages to let her character shine through. It's also revealed that Tana has been going through the past and keeping Crash and Coco from being killed, as it's been implied that the Crash and Coco of her universe had been killed. After fighting your way through the Salty Wharf, you find Akano, who helps you on your quest to close the portals. You then make your way to Tranquility Falls with Embryo, now voiced by Roger Craig Smith, as your next boss. Throughout the levels, Embryo constantly mentions that he has a present for you, and after you beat him, that present is revealed. Beating Embryo unlocks inverted levels, which are mirrored levels with challenging filters over them. Along with hidden gems to find in normal levels, inverted levels have their own hidden gems to find. However, boxes stay the same, so if you already know where those are, you can easily collect those gems. After beating Tranquility Falls, you unlock Mosquito Marsh, which is where Dingo Dow currently lives. He's changed his evil ways and opened up a new diner. His competitors, a group of bats, aren't too happy with that, so they blow it up, which prompts Dingo Dow to go out there and get his sweet revenge, for immediately being sucked into a portal to who knows where. Dingo Dow's story throughout the game is to find his way back home, while casually blundering through levels, also narrowly saving Crash and Coco in the process. Mosquito Marsh is also when you find the third mask, Kapunawa, a time-bending mask. She's not being held captive or anything, she's kind of just sleeping in the middle of a swamp. After finding Kapunawa, you unlock the 11th dimension, where Cortex resides in. You fight your way through his icy caves, enjoying the Crash 2 references in the music, and finally catch up to Cortex with a cute, furry past friend we haven't seen in a while, Polar. He looks absolutely adorable, but be wary, his controls are, best way to describe it, slippery, and his hitbox is tiny, causing you to really maneuver around boxes rather than crash into them. But, ignoring that, it was great to see Polar again. After you catch up with Cortex, you fight him for the first time. A challenging but fair boss fight. To be honest, most of the boss fights are great. Can't think of a single one that I felt dissatisfied with, except for a later boss fight which we'll get to later. After you fight Cortex, he decides to quit fighting and joins the Bandicoots to stop Entropy, who has revealed that he plans on going back, all the way back in time to literally restart everything. After that huge reveal, you make your way to the Egipus dimension to find Ika Ika. With a Cortex level here, a Dingo Dow level there, references to graphic Cortex and a cute little dinosaur that I've been missing dearly, we finally make our way to Ika Ika, who is also just kind of sleeping, who opens a portal to the Bermugula dimension. After making it onto Oxide's ship, we learn that Entropy's met a special someone, himself from another dimension. This female version of Entropy is supposedly from alternate Tano's dimension, and is also responsible for the death of Crash and Coco in that universe. After you make it to the end of this world, you fight the two Entropies in an admittedly mediocre boss fight. However, I will say that the Entropies boss fight seems to be a fake-out boss fight, to try to trick you into thinking you're at the end of the game, more like filler than anything of importance. Immediately after beating them, you go to the Snacks dimension for some R&R, almost like a celebration. However, at the end of this world, Cortex betrays you, stealing Kapunawa to go back in time to the point when Cortex's experiment fails, and Crash becomes the hero we know today. Except Cortex plans on getting past Cortex to stop the experiment. What follows is by far the hardest dimension in the game, Cortex Island, with levels to test your skills inside and out, and a final section in one of the final levels that tests your skills utilizing the quantum masks, all in one tricky puzzle. After making your way through Cortex Castle, you find past Cortex unconscious and in a cage. Present Cortex defeated him and steals a quantum mask to use in one of, if not the best final boss fights in Crash Bandicoot history. After defeating Present Cortex, it's revealed that Present Crash is the reason why past Crash's experiment fails, as he accidentally pulled a switch that probably shouldn't have been pulled. All in all, I love the story. The animation's great, the jokes are funny, and it's actually surprisingly engaging. A few gripes I do have is, first, that there's barely any time to get to know the other masks. Lonnie Lowly is clearly who you could call the main character of the Quantum Masks, and a constant problem throughout the story when referring to meeting the masks is that Lonnie Lowly does most of the talking. Like seriously, how often was it that a character trait from a mask was directly brought up by him, instead of them showing it themselves?
Short and to the point. Love this guy. Yeah, just gonna stop you there before you tell us how we all died.
Also regarding the masks, in the first mask you get, Akano, you would think that Cortex and Entropy were traveling through the dimensions to collect the quantum masks. But really, Akano's the only one that was held captive. Most of the other masks are just hanging out. Aku Aku also really need to show up a bit more. It's weird enough that no one mentions that Uka Uka's missing, but Aku Aku is his brother. Evil or not, I feel like he would have been more concerned about that, and probably should have been in more than like 2 cutscenes. Tana's character is a little bit off. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but it feels like the Tana in the cutscenes is different than the one in-game. And something that I felt was underutilized is the 2 Entropies. From the poster, you would think they would play a bigger role in the story, but their time on screen is just as short as the world they come from. What's amazing in Crash 4 is Crashing Coco's moveset, as well as the different characters you can play as. One thing I feel I should add is that a lot of people thought you could play as any character at any time. However, you can't play as any character you want for any level. After you reach a certain point of the game, you'll meet a new character and will unlock timeline levels, which is where you can play as them. And it also adds more difficulty to the regular levels. Crash and Coco play the same. They have the usual slide and jump, as well as a new slide kick, which you can activate by sliding and immediately pressing the spin button. A few new moves that have been added is rail sliding and wall running. While rail sliding, you can switch between sliding above or under the rails by pressing circle. You can spin, jump, and hop between rails by jumping and moving in the direction that the next rail is in. Wall running is a bit more simple. Later in the game, you'll find special walls with these arrows along them. If you jump up to them, Crash and Coco will immediately start running on the wall. You'll have to jump off of it before you hit the end, or Crash and Coco will fall. I personally have had a lot of trouble with wall running, mostly with activating the wall jump, and even having it cancel out on me on certain occasions. There are also new puzzle type levels called flashback tapes. Certain levels have them, and you can only collect them if you get up to that portion without dying. The levels themselves are challenging, but fair. They're probably my favorite part of this game. And since these flashback tapes take place during the testing phase, before Crash was taken into the Evolve Ray, it also features interesting lines from Cortex, including where Crash's shorts and Coco's overalls come from, as well as the fact that Cortex himself invented the TNT and Nitro crates. There's also a new type of crate called a Bounce Nitro crate that's introduced later in Coco's levels. They're first bounce crates, but after you bounce on them a certain amount of times, they turn into Nitro crates. There's a meter in the arrow that always shows you how many bounces you have left. Most importantly, if you don't bounce a Nitro crate into a regular Nitro crate, then the metal Nitro crate won't make it explode. I haven't had too much trouble with flashback tapes, other than a glitch with Bounce Nitro crates not activating when you hit them from the bottom, even though the animation for it still plays. Also new in Crash 4 is the Quantum Masks. Lonnie Loli, the first mask you gain, can switch between platforms and objects. Akana will force you into a powerful spin attack, which can help you glide across large areas, and can defeat certain enemies that can't be fought otherwise. Kapuna Walk can slow down time, help you platform across fast-moving objects, catch new timed crates, and can help you bounce off of Nitro crates. And finally, Ika Ika will flip gravity. You can only flip twice. After that, you have to land on the ground before you can flip again. All of these masks create fun and challenging ideas for puzzles, with Lonnie Loli's being my favorite of the new masks in terms of game design. There's also 2 vehicles in the game with an equal amount of appearances, Polar and the jet ski from Crash 2. Both have some control and hitbox issues, with Polar's being more prevalent. Polar's first level is really hard, but mostly due to the controls versus the design of the actual level. Polar's section asks you to be super precise when breaking crates, despite not giving you enough time to react to them. The jet ski is not much different. In its first level, you're on perfectly flat ground. You have enough time to react to anything, and you can move at your own pace. In its second and final level, though, you're forced down a river rapid and are again asked to be precise with a vehicle that's anything but precise. Moving on from that, there are 3 new characters you can play as: Tawna, Dingo Dow, and Cortex. Tawna has grappling hook gameplay similar to Nina Cortex from Crash Twinsanity, but obviously more polished. She has a spin kick, a stomp instead of a slide, and can grab or stun faraway enemies, except for a select few. Also worth noting is that Tawna's grappling hook can also break faraway crates, so watch out for crates hidden in the background. Dingo Dow is armed with a vacuum instead of a flamethrower. When holding R2, he can suck up off-screen crates and carry TNTs, but not Nitro crates, which will explode immediately when touched. He also has a spin attack like Crash and Coco. He can also double jump using his vacuum, and even hover for a short while, which can really help with awkward jumps. Cortex's levels are more puzzle-oriented. He has his ray gun, which can either turn enemies into a solid platform or a bouncy platform. And he also has a dash, which will help you cross long gaps. You even have a tiny amount of hang time just to correct your jumps. One thing I wish they could have done, though, is add a slightly different moveset for Cortex. I really hope in future Crash games that they incorporate more ideas from other side-scrolling shooters to make Cortex's gameplay not feel worse than Crash's. I just want a little more thought put into his playstyle. Something that's been a staple of the Crash series, and something that's come up in this game often enough and might as well be its own game mechanic, are hidden crates. Most are fun, but are nearly impossible to find. More on that in the criticism section. Related to hidden crates is gems. You can collect 6 in the original and inverted levels, and unlock new skins for Crash and Coco. And as mentioned before, there are hidden gems as well. There's also some couch co-op and multiplayer games. For the first time since Mind of a Mutant, you and a second player can play the game together. There's Bandicoot Battle, which has 2 game modes, Checkpoint Race and Crate Combo. In Checkpoint Race, each player has to go from checkpoint to checkpoint as fast as possible, with the fastest player being the winner for that round. In Crate Combo, you'll have to build the biggest crate combo before you reach the next checkpoint. After you hit a crate, the points collected from the next crate will double until it caps off at 32 points each. The person with the highest crate combo at the end of the round wins that round, and obviously will win the entire game if they win enough rounds. In order to play Bandicoot Battle, You'll only need one controller and will switch after each turn. The game can also be played with up to 4 players. Within the base game you can still do co-op, and you can have it so that you either switch after each death or after each checkpoint. I love the new mask and characters, with Tawna being my personal favorite. Running around and grappling enemies left and right is so satisfying, and finding hidden crates in Tawna's level is always a treat. And the controller switching co-op is a perfect way for families to play together, giving each player an equal turn. I would like to express the fact that while this part is negative in nature, it doesn't hurt my overall feelings for the game. These are just personal problems I've had with the game, as well as problems I feel should be either fixed through an update or should be addressed in the next Crash installment. First, we need to talk about the camera. The camera in Crash 4, and not unlike any other Crash game, is still a bit wonky. I appreciate the new ideas they incorporated to make the camera a little easier on you, but the camera is constantly changing in certain areas, and actually adds to the regular challenge of platforming, and they obviously didn't want it to be that way. What I mean by this is that some camera angles and camera changes are obviously made to help you, but in most cases they make the game harder, such as this gear and nitro processing, the entirety of the gym run in Toxic Tunnels, and this camera angle in Bears Repeating. While this camera angle and nitro processing might help you get onto the gear, jumping off of it is a nightmare. The shadow underneath Crash and Coco is being blocked off by the camera angle, and I don't have enough time to move before I land. When you're trying to go for an insanely perfect relic, you can imagine all the needless stress this puts on you, especially knowing you'll most likely have to start the level all over again. Toxic Tunnel's camera angle calls attention to another problem. The camera isn't looking at you, it's off to the side. In most side-scrolling areas, including the flashback tapes, this isn't usually a problem. But the camera angle is so extreme in the gym route, I can't tell where this electric fence starts or ends, which makes slide double jumping under feel like a gamble as to whether or not you'll stay alive. In Bears Repeating, the camera is sort of like an add-on of the already underlying problems with Polar. The camera is above you and looking down, and since some areas are downhills, it helps in these areas. But for the majority of this section, you'll be going straight forward, and the camera actually makes it harder to react to boxes. While I do love playing as the new characters, their levels are usually the ones that drag the longest. Playing as Tawna is very fun, and I love playing her levels, and her level sections. But afterwards you have to play through a slightly harder version of the current level, and sometimes these can drag on. I would rather that Tawna, Dingodong, and Cortex have their own levels, as sometimes when you get to the end of their section, it feels like you already finished a perfectly good level. Especially Cortex's sections can take a long time to get through, and it can feel frustrating to get through his section, then have to beat a hard level right after. It's like if right after you beat the Hyde Road, you immediately had to finish a harder version of the latter half to Sunset Vista. A big controversy that's been growing more and more is hidden boxes and hidden gems. I like hidden boxes in Crash games, but they weren't usually in every level. Finding hidden boxes every once in a while is fine, but most of the hiding places are egregious in this game. Some are even hidden within the scenery. There are okay ones like in No Dillo-Dallying that blend in with the background, but have enough focus on them to seem important. But in the real grind, these boxes are hidden inside these tires that not only have a small window to break them, but there's also no reason why you would think you could jump down here without dying. I have found many other areas that look like scenery, but also look like you could jump into them, and either promptly died or fell to my doom. Same thing goes for hidden gems. Most involve possibly falling or just jumping in a random area, which makes their placement feel cheap. I also feel that the idea of having hidden gems and hidden boxes in a game where you have no real control over the camera to be flawed. The fun part about finding hidden things in video games is to look around and find them, but most of the looking around in Crash 4 would have had happened to be in specific spots, or it requires trial and error jumping into the abyss. And probably the worst of them all, I don't think the 106% reward is even 106% worth the effort. The special 106% ending, spoiler alert, is literally the same ending with a tiny clip showing that Uka Uka was alive all along. Personally, I feel like getting 100% is worth enough. You have all the skins in the game, I'm pretty sure all the concept art, and a funny where are they now sort of skit, much like the other Crash games. This category is specifically for things that I like that aren't really related to any of the other categories. First up, some seemingly mundane things. You can change the fonts for the subtitles, their sizes, and even the box's shade. And there's also colorblind modes, and you can even change how strong the filter is. I'm not colorblind myself, but I feel like it's worth pointing out. The animation is great. I wasn't a fan of Insane Trilogy's stiff and lifeless animations, at least compared to the original games. And I feel that Crash 4's animation is more true to how Crash was portrayed in the 90s. While I complained about the collectibles blending in with the backgrounds, the environments really are amazing. From the sandy beach overgrowth of Insanity Beach to the deep purples and reds of Tranquility Falls, this game is gorgeous. Character designs are top-notch. Nicholas Cole has come back from Reignited Trilogy to redesign Crash and his friends. His redesigns of all the characters are amazingly expressive and overall cute. Most of the original cast couldn't come back, but the new cast for this game did great jobs as stand-ins. You could hardly tell the difference between Roger Craig Smith and Maurice LaMarche, and Scott White and Eden Rigo did amazing jobs as Crash and Coco. A huge improvement from Insane Trilogy is that animation cycles only start once you're near them. Insane Trilogy had a problem where cycles might change depending on where you died, and while some people utilized it to make certain cycles happen, I think that has been a pretty big problem. Especially since what makes Crash 1's relics work is that the game is built so that you can do it in one go. While it is a bit jarring to walk back and see a crate hanging in midair for a split second, the fact that it's resetting its animation so that the cycles are more consistent made me more than eager to try doing relics again. Time trials have ghosts. When playing Nitro Fueled, a big thing that helped me beat the developer times was beating my own ghosts. It's a lot easier to make improvements when you can actually see where you went wrong, or even how fast you're going compared to your past self. When trying to get gold or platinum relics, usually you would have to wait until you got to the end of a level to see whether you improved or not. But the new time trial ghosts completely skipped that step. My final rating for this game would probably be an 8 out of 10. All in all, I love Crash 4. It's a hard game, but fair for the most part. The graphics are amazing, the music is astounding, and the new playable characters were a great addition to the series. It's got some low lows to it that hurt it from being perfect in my eyes, but if you're willing to put up with these lows, you'll do just fine.